Buenos dias, Gunners Collective TV. Back at it. You already know. Like a torta with some bad habits. Bye up, bye up. You got to slide. Bye. You got to slide when you do it. Make sure you slide when you do it. Let's get straight to the intro. Welcome back to the channel. And if you haven't already hit that like and subscribe button, make sure you go ahead and do that. Put your notification bell on all so that way you're directed in the direction of the dope content that the gun stays kicking. And I highly appreciate the support, man. I'm very humbled by it. Again, put those notifications on all. A lot of people, they don't understand. YouTube puts them on personalized or puts them on none, and then you won't get no new content dropped from your favorite content creator. Not necessarily myself, but anyone else that you watch. So go ahead and do that. That's why I give you the game. Now, let's talk about this new article that LA Times has put out. Now, LA Times is a pretty reputable news outlet. A lot of people read what LA Times puts out because a lot of the stuff that they put out is dead on. It's accurate. They vetted the information. They do their due diligence. And I enjoy reading LA Times articles, probably more than any other articles, just because I know they always put a twist to the stories that are put out there. Now, this new article is called, Did the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitations provide a safe haven for SNY gangs to thrive? Now, I'll say this. If you think about it, Cdcr implemented the SNY gangs with the sole purpose of separating people who had sensitive needs. Now, a sensitive need can mean anything when you're in the California Department of Corrections. When you're behind those walls, you can need certain medications. You could, be allergic to certain things. You could be an older gentleman that is no longer has the capacity to deal with a general population yard, meaning you can't walk, you're confined to a wheelchair, you got a disease. There's a lot of different reasons behind SNY sensitive needs. But the majority of us know when they say that, that is just another word for protective custody. It's a place where they protect mostly gang dropouts, people who have defected, people that have been removed from yards, people that no longer have the audacity to go out to those yards because they know it's all bad, or those that just can't walk a general population yard because they fucked up somewhere along the line, or somebody felt that they're not worthy to be on those yards. Whatever the case may be, SNY is just another word, a synonym used to describe protective custody yards. Now, when they were created by CDC, they were created to house, like I said, people that had certain elements going on with their life, and also people that actually were protective custody inmates, like chomos and baby killers and things of that nature. The bottom of the barrel, the dredges of criminality, right? The people that needed to go on these yards to protect them from what would happen to them on a GP yard. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean everybody that's on a general population yard is a smooth character. It just means they're running smooth game. There's a lot of people that are telling. There's a lot of people that are no good. There's a lot of people whose past is not quite caught up with them, and they are out there on the GP yards wiggling. They're able to get by, but for how long? That is the million-dollar question, right? Because eventually everybody's truth comes to surface. Everybody gets found out. Everybody's paperwork gets pulled. Everyone's getting there. It's just the way it is. It's the way life is set up, man. You can only get away with something for so long before everybody knows what it is, okay? Does that make them a bad person? No, but it makes them a person that is not going to be allowed to walk on GP. Now, as far as this LA Times article, did CDCR make this a safe havens for SNY gangs to thrive? Let me explain this to you. SNY gangs have thrived. And what do I mean by SNY gangs? These are gangs that were actually created on the SNY yards. Now, you would say to yourself, why would ex-gang members or people that have never been about that business create other gangs and be looked at a certain way? Well, I'll explain to you. It's very simple. It is very simple. A lot of these gangs that are on the SNY, maybe not nowadays, but when it first was created, these protective custody yards, these are gangs that were actually established on general population within administrative segregation. You had gangs like 2-5 and Northern Riders and so on and so forth. And I know a lot of these gangs don't classify themselves as protective custody gangs or SNY gangs. They like to consider themselves still active gang members. But if that's the case, then you sign your chrono off and you take your chances back out on that yard and you see what happens. Okay. Now, CDCR's running a whole different program right now. So a lot of these gang members that have joined gangs while in SNY, that were ex-gang members or removed or drop out or disgruntled, or they figured, hey, they're not ready to let the criminality go. They're not ready to let the gang lifestyle go. They're going to go join something else and be a part of something because that's all they know, right? They are actually being integrated nowadays under this new California model due to the end of hostilities. They are being out there and integrated with GP inmates. Now, they did it at the lower levels, level 1s and level 2s in the beginning. And there wasn't a lot of smoke. But as soon as they started putting these SNY gang members and people that are on SNY yards integrated and mixed in with GP inmates on the 3 and 4 yards, all hell broke loose. Okay, what CDCR did at first to test the waters was they started with one gang who a lot of people are understandably confused when it comes to this particular group. The Fresno Bulldogs, right? The Fresno Bulldogs are not a dropout gang. They are a gang that defected from the group they once were a part of and decided to do their own thing. Does that mean they dropped out of an organization or a group? A lot of people could take it that way and like to say that. But at the end of the day, my Klecha, what I know about it, what I was around for while it was implemented, I seen it as a group within a cause, within an organization that decided they were being ridiculed, they were being oppressed within their people, and felt like they had the numbers and they could make it on their own. Now, it's been 30 years since then, and they are still thriving. They're still around. They have not been erased or taken off the map. And I know a lot of people like to believe it's because they're segregated on prison yards, and that could be a part of it. But even more so than that is they have that mindset and that within themselves to continue what they're going to continue. So I don't consider them a dropout gang. I know a lot of people do, but I don't. They were the first group that was actually that CDCR tried to integrate onto yards with Norteños and Southsiders, and it didn't work out. Okay? It didn't work out, not because the North and South were not going to allow these dudes to walk the mainline yards with them, but because them guys did not want to walk the yards as well with North and South. So it's kind of a two-way street there, man. Everybody wasn't trying to kick it with everybody. That's the facts, right? Now, as far as that particular group, you're not going to see them on an SNY yard unless they are dropout Bulldogs. Because, yes, let me explain to you, the Bulldogs do also have dropouts. And they also have a dropout gang that was started, I think, in the 2000s called Cutthroats, right? Cutthroat Bulldogs, which you wouldn't be able to identify them different from Bulldogs because they get all the same tattoos. They look the part, they play the part, but they are housed on SNY yards because they have a sensitive need. The sensitive need being they cannot be housed with active Fresno Bulldogs because they fucked up somewhere along the line. Now, these guys have started their own gang, and it has leaked out into the streets of Fresno. And I got homeboys that are actually active Fresno Bulldogs and guys that are no longer in that life, but were once Fresno Bulldogs that I chop it up with on the daily. And they tell me that those cutthroats, man, are literally guys that try to blend in on the streets, but when they do go to prison, they try to get in where they fit in on the SNY yards. Now, the SNY yards are going to be a mix of everybody. You're going to have guys from Southern California, guys from Northern California, guys from Central California, like Fresno, right? Guys that are just non-affiliates or were residents at one point in time that got into the mix and decided the mix wasn't for them, so decided to defect over to the SNY yards. And then a lot of people that were removed. Now, the difference with the guy who dropped out and the difference with the guy who was removed is a big difference. A guy that trying to get his life together and decided, you know what, I no longer want to participate in this. I know a lot of people that are still active and in the life are going to say that's a punk move, a cowardice act. They bowed down to what they signed up for. You could say whatever you want, but that man and only that man knows, and his family, why he decided to go on the other side. That's what is traditionally called in the California Department of Corrections. The GPs will call it the other side, right? And for whatever their reasons are, there's no man that should be able to judge them besides those that they were associated with or loyal to at some point. I could understand them guys being upset with them. You left them hanging. They feel like you left them on a GP yard where it's dangerous and always at guerra, it's always at war. and chose to go to a yard you thought was more comfortable and easier for you to obtain and access certain simplicities of life, certain things that you can't necessarily get on a GP yard, right? Whatever the case may be, those guys that decided to do that there's a big difference with guys that were removed. See, guys that were removed, whacked, cut up, not killed on the yard, you can see why some of them join or start these other gangs, these SNY gangs, because they were not ready to give up the ghost. They were actually pushed out of their gang. They were told, no bueno, no can do anymore. You're no longer welcome. And so these guys decide to start gangs because they still have that push in them. They still have that fire burning in them, even though they are told or removed and told they're no longer welcomed to that yard. They're not ready to give it up. And that's where a lot of these SNY gangs started, from guys that had one reasoning or another to join. Now, when it first started in the beginning, it was just like any other group or gang on GP or any other side, right? A lot of dudes did it for self-preservation, for protection, for security reasons, and like I said, a lot of the first SNY gangs, what are considered SNY gangs now, PC gangs, did start on main lines. They were groups that defected or groups that decided they did not want to be a part of. And that's how that went down. Now, the guy you see on my thumbnail is a very well-known individual for starting one of the bigger gangs that is considered an SNY gang. I know they like to say they're not, they're active. But at the end of the day, this is just the way that CDCR classifies them, not me. No disrespect to them dudes doing their thing. I respect every man like a man, not for your gang or your group, but as a man, right? But that is Badass Snoop, Mauricio Vasquez. And Maurice Vasquez is known to be the founder and started a group known as the Riders or Northern Riders when they were first initiated into CDC. And he started it in Tracy, California, in Tracy DVI prison, where he was disgruntled with the movement that he was part of, which was the Norteño movement. He was what was considered a Norteño at the time, part of the Northern Structure movement. And he decided to go out onto that yard and declare guerra, declare war against his own people, which is considered a bandito move and a cowardice act. But he did that. He stood his ground on the yard, went out there, got into some fights with a few guys, and then declared he was going to start and be a part of a new group, the Northern Riders. They have now taken the name Certified Riders. They got a lot of different names. They're a group that's known to be based out of mostly Northern California, but they do recruit people from Southern California all over the United States. It's just part of what they got going on. Now, in this LA Times article, they said that basically CDCR gave these groups and these gangs a safe haven to thrive, to accumulate numbers, to become more powerful and stronger, because numbers does equate to power. And you are thriving on the California prison system, on them yards, if you have numbers, if you have soldados, if you have manpower, whatever term you like to use, right? That's definitely the case. And it's not hard for a gaggle or a group of gentlemen that were once hardcore killers or gang members to come together with a common purpose and start extorting people on the yard, start pushing their weight around. Nowadays, it's probably a little bit harder because you have so many different groups that have sprung up, so many different gangs. Okay, like I said, the Bulldogs have their own cutthroats. You have Northern Riders. You have 2-5ers, which are traditionally guys from Southern California. The IRs, which are the independent riders that are traditionally from the IE area, right? You have groups like Full 60, Sucker Freeze, Capital Punishments from Sacramento. You have so many different groups. BBCs, which are BBC. You say BBC, and Lena fucking popped her head out, right? No, it's not Jason Love. It's the BBCs, which are a white dropout skinhead and Wood gang, right? You got a lot of these different things and things I don't even know about. And were they able to thrive, like the LA Times article says? I agree. I agree that these groups, because they were in a place where there was really no opposition, in a place where really they could accumulate numbers, and people were dropping out by the thousands, right? At that particular time during the 2000s. And even now, there was definitely a numbers game being played, and there was definitely a safe place to recruit. Now, did it stay safe for long? Absolutely not. The SNY yards, regardless of what anyone says, are probably the most active and some of the worst yards to go to in the California Department of Corrections. And why is that? Because there's no structure. There's no program necessarily. There is no politics. And when you have a lot of guys that there's no racial barriers, there's no line drawn in the sand, there's no politics, you don't have to answer to anyone. That makes a lot of guys that necessarily on other yards wouldn't be brave, they gain bravery. they decide that they could be the man. They start faking the funk and acting like they are more than they really are, right? And they get a gang of young, impressionable men to join their groups in their ranks, and they start pushing the line, start pushing a hard line on people that are not a part of that. And what does that do? That creates chaos. And then when you have different groups and gangs, they all feel like they still are a part of something. They start having their own little type of politics and reglas and rules amongst themselves, and they start to war. And it's been traditionally like that for years within the SNY yards. You have a lot of gangs that are SNY gangs, but don't consider themselves that, but are that, and they are warring with each other. So it's dangerous. And it's dangerous for inmates or prisoners that are put over there, convicts that no longer want to be a part of that gang life and just want to do their time and get out. A lot of lifers that have left that in the past because they want a chance at fresh air and opportunity, and they get caught up because of the wars that are going on, constant lockdowns and things of that situation, things of that nature, based upon what these guys are doing. So LA Times, the article hit, definitely. And they're right. CDCR did give these guys an opportunity to thrive. You know, it's when you see gangs forming, it's not very hard in the beginning to chop the head off the snake and to kind of break up that situation. But when they use the guise of a SNY, a sensitive need yard, are protecting these guys, meanwhile, these guys were victimizing each other and others on that yard consistently. They didn't get to it quick enough. When they started to realize and recognize exactly what was going on, that it was just basically a roundabout and these gang members were still being gang members, it was already too late. So yes, they did provide an area for them to thrive. They did provide these safe haven yards that everyone thought you can go to and it was going to be safe and you can get out on time, to become some of the worst yards on California prison history. And that's just the truth. Now we hear about the craziest yards, like in DVI. You know, you hear about Gladiator School, and you know about Old Corcoran and the Gladiator Wars they had there. And you know about New Folsom and Kern Valley and Salinas Valley and High Desert, and Pelican Bay was probably synonymous with being one of the most notorious prisons ever created on earth, right? But at the end of the day, some of the craziest yards in California system right now are the SNY yards, because there's no rules. There's no rhyme or reason. You got a bunch of guys still playing gangster, or a bunch of guys that really are gangsters or do have that mentality, and they're killing each other. Okay? But what CDCR is doing to combat that, they're utilizing a tactic called the California model, and they're utilizing a tactic such as integration. And what does that do? That just creates more chaos, because now you don't only have to deal with these SNY gangs that are fighting each other, or these active guys that are in GP that have beef. We know right now on GP yards, man, there's more to the end of hostilities, so there's a lot less tension on them yards as in the past. There still is always going to be separation of groups. That's how it is. That's how it's always going to be. But then you have them integrating with protective custody, SNY gangs, and the funk is on. It's definitely on. So that's the way CDCR is deciding to combat it. Instead of going onto these yards and eradicating these gang leaders and the people that they feel, and I'm talking about on the SNY yards, not the active yards, they feel are the ones that are pushing this line and creating these gangs, they allow them to go to a general population yard where they get smoked immediately, or they smoke someone immediately. And by smoked, I think you know what I mean when I say what I mean, right? We'll just go with that. But I read that article, and I implore you guys read that article. It's a good one, and they hit it dead on. You know, a lot of these gangs would not be in existence, these dropout gangs, if they weren't allowed to go to a soft yard, a place that initially was soft, and they were able to change the direction of the yard, change what that yard was created for. You know, and it's unfortunate for guys that really try to get their lives together and do their thing, that go to these prison yards. Look, prison is prison, man. And there's nothing you sign that says it's going to be safe or it should be safe. Okay, when you create crime and you create violence on the streets, then you begot violence within them walls, right? But I understand a lot of people that are on the SNY yards went over there for scandalous intentions. They didn't go to change. They went over there because it's easier. They get more visits, more packages. They're never on lockdown that much, and they can get up out of there. But now it's worse. Now you got guys that are actually on the SNY yards, and they'll use the excuse, I don't want to be around the chomos. I don't want to be around the rats and the rapos and all these type of people. But really, the thing is, they're tired of being on lockdown, and they're tired of the fucking type of violence that's there. They're willing to go take their chance on a GP yard. Well, I'm here to tell you, there's nowhere for you to run or hide. You got to do what you got to do. So I recognize that article that LA Times put out, and I thought I'd just give my 2 cents on it. I thought they were dead on a lot that they said. And yes, CDCR is to blame for a lot of the gang violence, a lot of the things they've done. See, if you know your history with the CDC, pretty much everything that was created is based on the interpretation of what they do. A lot of the names given to these groups, a lot of the slang, a lot of the derogatory terms that people now utilize to disrespect other groups was all implemented and started by CDC. A lot of people don't understand the blue rags, the red rags, all that was started by CDC. The sagging, being called sagging, that was integrated and implemented by the CDC within the California prison system. It's all truths. Anyways, with that being said, I hope I gave you a little bit of glitch out today, some game on top of game. I'm not giving up game, but I'm giving game. And look, trip out. No disrespect to any of the SNY groups or any of the active groups, man. I'm not here for that. I'm not here to dissuade anyone from doing what they do. You're a man. You do what you do. I'm just saying, based off what I've seen and what I know to be truth with that article, they were dead on, man. Some of these littlest, these protective custody gangs or whatever you want to call them would not even be close to existence if CDCR didn't cuddle and cater to the needs of individuals who basically ran drag on them. Thumbs up or thumbs down. Heavy's going to be the head that wears the crown. See, I'm going to continue to strive, struggle, and strive for what I truly believe in. That's the betterment of all people. This video is sponsored by Barrio Liquors. And no, they do not take EBT, but it's sponsored by Barrio Liquor. But I'll tell you what, it does take: cash, credit card, and all that other good shit, man. So go over there and get you something cold to drink. Also by Sticks and Stones Yard Service. If you're in the AZ area and you need someone that's definitely dope at his trade and what he does, get a hold of Sticks and Stones Yard Service, man. He'll come take care of you. This is the gun. Bang, bang.